11 of the fantasy football season. His running back sits this week. The first start, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs, the last few weeks, he's really getting things going and taking the backfield by storm, even though I know David Montgomery had over 100 yards in the last game as well at the Los Angeles Chargers. But Gibbs, he had 2 goal line touchdowns. He's a dynamic running back that could catch the football as one of the better running backs in the league that could do that. And this week he had a good matchup versus the Bears coming to town. I think Jahmyr Gibbs once again has a great game when he's a start. The next start, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. So after 4 games on injured reserve, Devon Achane's going to be back in this game here. And I think it's going to be a 50-50 split with him and Raheem Mostert. We saw Achane explode for some monster games early in the season with his speed and what he could do in between the tackles and catching the football. It's another weapon for this Miami Dolphin offense to get back in the mix here. And with a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders, I wouldn't hesitate at all to get Achane back in the lineup. I know he might not be 100% after returning over the last few weeks here, but like I said, a dynamic running back. Mike McDaniel likes him a lot in the offense. I think they throw him right into the fire, and he's a start. The next start, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. So Kenneth Walker, we know he's a home run hitting type of running back. He had a screen touchdown for 64 yards and found the end zone in last week's game versus the Commanders. And this week here, good matchup at the Los Angeles Rams, where I believe they'll be running lanes. And Kenneth Walker, it just takes one big run for him to have a huge day, and we know he's a home run hitter. So this week here, after Kenneth Walker got a healthy workload and a game, as long as the game script goes this Seattle Seahawk way, where it's a closer game, and Charbonnet, we know, is a little bit of a better receiver out of the backfield than Walker. Walker's going to get a majority of the work. So this week, I have him as a start again. The next start, Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So pretty much there's no other running backs competing to get any work with White over there for this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. Vaughn, he really hasn't done much this season. Sean Tucker, many people thought, could take the job by midseason, or at least have a decent portion of the workload. But Sean Tucker's been a non-factor as well. And Rachaad White, one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. We saw last week versus the Titans, he had a 43-yard touchdown. So right now, I know it's a tough matchup on paper, but White is well a top 5, top 10 receiving back out of the backfield. And Baker Mayfield, he has confidence in White going out in the flats and making some plays. So this week, even in a tough matchup in PPR leagues, White's been a solid number 2 running back over the last month of the season. And he's a start once again. The next start, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. So Jerome Ford, he's been a solid running back filling in for Nick Chubb. He could catch the football out of the backfield. He's got breakaway speed as well. And for the most part, he's outplayed Kareem Hunt pretty much every game this season is Jerome Ford. I know this week it's a tougher matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers that have a great defensive line and one of the better defenses in the league. But Ford, as a solid number 2 running back as well, has been a player that's getting 12, 15 fantasy points weekly, and that's perfect for your number 2 running back position. So even in the tougher matchup with his catching ability, I have him as a start. Next start, Devin Singletary of the Houston Texans. So coming off that monster performance, 30 carries, 150 yards in that one at the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't really see Dameon Pierce being a factor in this backfield, even if he returns in this game. Pierce really hasn't done much all season. It's a new regime over there this season for this Houston Texan team that didn't draft Dameon Pierce or really have anything to do with him, obviously. And they brought in Singletary in the offseason, and they know he has a lot of experience in between the tackles and a good catch passer as well out of the backfield, better than Pierce. So after coming off a monster workload and with a great matchup this week, Devin Singletary is a start. In the final start, Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders. So Gibson obviously plays a good role in PPR leagues, and it's pretty much a running back that doesn't run at all in between the tackles. That goes to Brian Robinson on this offense. But in terms of catching the football, Gibson does a lot of it. He was a wide receiver in college, and now he lines up as well in the slot a little bit at the time. So him and Sam Howell have a good rapport. It seems like 4 or 5 catches a game we're seeing from Antonio Gibson. And this week here versus a weak Giant team that just gave up 49 points to the Dallas Cowboys, Gibson is a start that sits Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's been a solid second season here for Isaiah Pacheco for this Chief team. But right now it's a tough matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Stuffed running backs all season, one of the better defensive lines in the league. And we know this game's going to come down to Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and who goes out there and makes the big play. So right now, Pacheco, solid running back, no doubt about it. But this week in the tough matchup, he's a sit. Staying in the same game, DeAndre Swift a sit is for me as well. Right now, this Kansas City Chief team, their defense is playing great. Chris Jones, it's been a big bring back for him. And obviously, a lot of teams have been trailing this season where they got to throw the football. But this one, I don't see Swift doing much. We know he's had a couple monster games early in the season, but the last few weeks, the numbers are leveled out for the most part here for DeAndre Swift. And in a tough matchup at Kansas City where it's going to be a lot of passing up and down the field, he's a sit. James Cook a sit for me as well. Tough matchup versus the New York Jets. I know Josh Jacobs carved out a good game where he went over 100 yards, but James Cook, he's been an up-and-down running back all season. This is a pass-first, pass-happy Buffalo Bill team. I know Cook could catch the football out of the backfield, but this New York Jet defense, they've been a stout unit all season, and really a team that hasn't been giving up a lot of points and touchdowns on the year. So James Cook's a sit. Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers the next sit. Tough matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. We saw Saquon Barkley pretty much not do much last game versus them. And even going back a few weeks ago at the Eagles, he didn't do much as well as DeAndre Swift. So Chuba Hubbard, solid running back. He's been over the last couple seasons. Good catch passer out of the backfield. But in a game where he could get out of hand early and often with the Cowboys coming to town, I don't see Hubert doing much. And we didn't even see him do much last week in that game at the Bears. So he's a sit. Khalil Herbert of the mentioned Chicago Bears is a sit. It looks like Herbert's going to come back in this game. Last week he practiced most of the week but didn't give it a go on Thursday Night Football. And Deonta Foreman, he's been a solid fill-in, no doubt about it. But Khalil Herbert, more of a dynamic running back than a Deonta Foreman. He could run in between the tackles. He could catch the ball out of the backfield. But this week, where most likely he's not 100%, and in a game where it could get out of hand early and often at the Lions, I don't see Herbert really doing much in this one. So he's a sit. I got to wait and see with a guy like Herbert. Obviously, if he was a top running back like an Austin Eckler or Christian McCaffrey coming off injury, I would plug him into the lineup. But this week with matchup, game script, and with Foreman playing well, Herbert's a sit. Kareem Hunt a sit for me as well. He's pretty much been a touchdown-dependent running back where Jerome Ford's outperformed him in yards per carry and catching the football out of the backfield. So this week a tough matchup versus division for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe this is going to be a grinded-out game between these two teams. And last week, Hunt really didn't do much. If he didn't score that touchdown, he only had 3.5 fantasy points. So this week with a tough matchup and Jerome Ford outperforming him this season, he's a sit. And the final sit's Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. So Darrell Henderson, we know he's really not that great of a running back, even though over the last 3 games since he's returned to the Los Angeles Rams, he's had double-digit fantasy games in 2 of them, and then he put in a dud performance in that game at the Green Bay Packers in Week 9 before the bye. But right now, one more week, they're going to need Henderson and Freeman to carry the load, is this Ram team. And then it looks like Kyren Williams is coming off of injured reserve for Week 12. So this week, in a matchup versus stout run defense for the most part in the Seattle Seahawks, I don't really see Darrell Henderson doing much. Him and Royce Freeman, for the most part, they're in a split over there for this Los Angeles Ram team. And like I said, his yards per carry really haven't been great. So that's running back start sits for Week 11 of the fantasy football season.